Let's get rolling. So, employment over 50, well, what actually does that mean? What we're going to learn today is I am going to help you to create a basic, what we call a T table. And what that means is that it's going to match your skills with what the job description is looking for. So when you are doing your resume, cover letter, or actually even just sitting down thinking to yourself, what type of job would I like to go after now? This is going to help you. We're also going to be able to talk more about networking and what are some of the advantages of networking. We're going to get do a deep dive into understanding when and why it's important to leave some of that experience off and the qualifications that go beyond what the company is looking for. I really want to teach you on avoid the pitfalls of being what's called overqualified. And then I'm going to also talk to you about how do you successfully keep the momentum up when you're doing job search moving forward. So the good news is before we get to hear the good news, let me hear something from you. So, one of the things that I would like for you to do is that if you are not familiar with using the chat, I'm going to have you do this right now. So, I want you to put one word in the chat, describe how your job search has been going so far. And don't use any words that you wouldn't use in a professional interview. So, Sheila, I would like to have you come back on just for a little bit and give me an idea of some of the words that people are putting in the chat in regards to their job search.
Oh, frustrating, lackluster. Okay. Challenging, tough, slow, excited.
Nice. Okay,
Oh,
great.
yeah, overwhelming, humbling, not
Yes.
good, scary, challenging.
Yes.
A lot of
So,
similarity.
yes, I first off want to compliment you on being honest. Okay. The truth of the matter is that looking for a job is a job. And also, it is frustrating. It is overwhelming. It's enduring. It's tough to keep on doing something when many employers don't respond back to you. So, first off, I want to congratulate you for attending this workshop because I'm going to give you some insight on what's actually going on out there. And then, second off, I want to validate how you're feeling. So, let's talk first about some good news. Okay. Um, what has happened because of the pandemic is that it's created a new demand. And, I am going to talk to the powers that be and see that we can change this word to where it says older workers to seasoned workers. I even have that crossed out on my notes. Um, it's created a new demand for us. Okay. A lot of times we don't feel like we're in demand anymore, but I am going to do my absolute best to adjust your thinking during this workshop. So, first off, what has ended up happening was that the employers are learning that the younger generations do not have the same work ethics as we do. Now, certainly I'm not saying all, but I'm saying many. Okay, so many of the younger generation do not have the same work ethics that we do. In addition to that, um, experienced workers have an edge. Okay, it's important to remember that we have what is called emotional intelligence. So a lot of the younger people that I work with in helping them find employment, what I find a lot of times is that they're working for the next job. So what I mean by that is that they'll start a job, stay there maybe 90 days, and then they'll go to the next job and the next job and the next job and the next job. And a lot of that is because there's so many jobs to pick from right now. So obviously we all work for money, right? But what employers are finding out is that when they do hire the seasoned employee, which that's who we are, that we tend to stay at those jobs. We also have dedication. We're not necessarily bringing our cell phone into the job place, sitting at our office, at our desk, texting, okay? Uh, Looking at Facebook, posting on Facebook, um, unless that's part of our job, right? Another thing that is so important to employers that they've kind of taken for granted up until now is that we are very adaptable. So when you are interviewing, I want you to say stuff like this. You know, I'm here to let you know that I will do the job the way you want it done. Okay. Most people, when they are our age and they're interviewing, they say, oh, no, that's not the way I was taught, or that's not in my job description, or that's not the way I do it. What you want to do is you want to let the employer know that, look, I will do the job the way you want me to do it. I am adaptable. So if we find a better way to do it, I'm willing to change. I love to learn. Okay. People aren't saying that anymore at the interview. What's changed? Let's talk a little bit about that. So, what has changed since the last time that you looked for work? Well, one of the things that have changed is that we are going to focus on matching your skills to the skills that are listed on the job description. So we were taught years ago that you do one resume and you send that out to everybody. So meaning that you don't have to adjust your resume at all. Um, Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to teach you that you do your resume and adjust it to the job you're applying for, giving the employer the impression that he or she is the only person or the only job that you're applying for. Now, it does not mean you have to recreate a brand new resume every time, but what you do is you just adjust a little bit. And again, we'll break this down a little more for you as we go along. Networking. You can do networking both in person and online. So, networking is just that. It's when you are out and about. So, you could be grocery shopping, you could be at church, you could be on the elevator, you could be going to the dentist office. Here's what I find when I'm working with you one on one. Because job search is so enduring, oftentimes discouraging. Oftentimes, you'll go through all of this work, sending in your resume, your cover letter, any of the documentation that the job is requesting, and you don't hear anything. Okay. That has nothing to do with your age. That has to do with the fact that employers oftentimes do not respond back. Okay. So, when you're networking, what I find a lot of times is that you're getting discouraged because job search is difficult. And so what you do is your body language starts to reflect that. So maybe you aren't carrying good eye contact anymore. Your head is down, your shoulders are forward. I want you to lift your head up, throw them shoulders back, and everybody that you run into, I want you to say, you know what? I'm looking for a job. Do you know of anybody that's hiring? I am looking for a job. Do you know of anybody that's hiring? Okay, that is still to this day the quickest way to end up getting a job. Another thing that has changed is teleconferencing. So, teleconferencing is what we're doing right now. Okay, one of the things that is really awesome about the Career Force, which I wanted to let you know too, that when you get your follow-up information tomorrow, it's going to include Career Force locations throughout the state of Minnesota. But what we will do is we will practice conferencing with you. Many of the employers are offering remote work, which means you could be working out of your home. You could be working out of, for instance, the Duluth office, but the company is located in the metropolitan area. One of the services that we will offer for you is for you to actually come down to the career force and use our equipment to do your teleconferencing interview. A lot of people don't know that we can actually help with the interview. And then in addition to that, they will turn the interview down because they don't have their own equipment or they don't feel comfortable enough with their cell phone to be able to do it on the cell phone. Reach back out to us because we're here to help you with that. And we're delighted to. And the biggest thing that has changed is you. Okay. I want you to take a look at how you have changed. So, what are your expectations? What types of skills have you learned since you have been laid off or lost your job? You know, there are many, many people due to the pandemic who have lost their jobs, and in addition to that, the business closed. So that's a double portion of grief, right? And oftentimes people don't know for sure what to do. So the first thing I want you to do is to consider taking out a piece of paper, and you don't need to do this right now. Again, you're going to get all this information tomorrow in your follow-up email, but you're welcome to. But what I would have you do is take a piece of paper and put a T right on the middle of the piece of paper. What you're going to do on the left-hand side is you're going to write bullets from the job listing. So when I was in my previous position, when I was doing interviewing, you would not believe how many times people would come in and they didn't even read the job description. They would say things to me like, "What do you do here?" Now, this was a well-known nonprofit agency, but if you're going to say to the interviewer, "What do you do here?" you're going to accidentally offend the interviewer because they're going to say, "Really, you don't even know what our company does." So I want to encourage you to, at the very least, Google the company. We also encourage you to go on LinkedIn. Take a look and see if the company's there. Go on the company's webpage. Do your absolute best to get a hold of their mission statement. I remember when I was interviewing one time, they said, "Why do you want to work here for us?" And I quoted their mission statement back to them. And the interviewer at the time said, "Goodness, I didn't even know that was our mission statement." But do you see how you are being a step above other people who are interviewing at the moment just by knowing some of these nuggets? So I love how this is written because it's showing that they have taken the items off of the job listing and then right directly across from this, they've answered. They, I want you to put yourself in their place. Okay. So let's just use the first one as an example. So the job listing says that there you would be recruiting team members. And your answer would be, I exceeded all recruitment goals by attending job fairs and sourcing new applicants from various job boards. Now, the additional way to put this is I want to encourage you to put in, if you can, numbers. So if you could put exceeded all recruitment goals by 20% or exceeded all recruitment goals by hiring an additional 10 people. But if you can put numbers in there, that even brings it up to the next level. The second one is talking about experience and collaboration. But do you see how these are lining up directly with what the employer is looking for? Another thing that I love about the T table or T chart is that you can take this information then that you've written down on your T chart and put it directly on your cover letter as well. Networking, let's talk a little bit about networking. So when you are actually networking, the first thing that I want you to ask yourself is, who do you want to work for? Or what type of work do you want to do? Learn from the people who are actually doing the work. With LinkedIn and some of our other social networking websites out there, you can go and do a little bit of research above and beyond what we used to be able to do. I also want you to ask yourself, do I have the competitive skills to actually apply for this job? Do I want this job? Find out if there's any insider tips while you're doing your networking. So let's use a real life example. Let's say that you talk to a person who works at the job that you would like to get hired at. Say this person goes to the same church you do. Okay. What I want you to do is I want you to have a good sound conversation with this person and ask them, how do you like your job? What do you do there? How do they treat you? What happens when you have a problem? What did you say at the interview? But feel free and confident enough to have that conversation and ask those questions. This is going to give you a better idea of whether or not you want the job or whether or not you want to work there. Now, because networking is the quickest way to get a job, I want to explain to you why it is from the employer's point of view. When I was the operations manager of the nonprofit, we had a lot of volunteers who would come in and help. When I had a job opening, if I could go to one of those volunteers and say, "Would you be looking for a job?" It was the easiest way for me to hire a person. Now, think about this for a moment. I didn't have to advertise. I didn't have to go into extensive interviewing because I knew the person was already a good worker because they showed up. They worked really well with the staff I already have in place. They got along really well with others. If there were any conflicts, we were able to work through it. So know that if you are struggling, I want to encourage you, do your applying and then go out and do something you enjoy. I always find that if you are doing some volunteer work and giving back into your community, it tends to keep you in the right frame of mind for when you do get that interview. It also helps you to create relationships that when there is a need, they'll think of you first. But none of this is going to happen if you're feeling bad about yourself and you're not letting anybody know that you want a job. Teleconferencing, let's talk a little bit more about that. First off, you're doing it right now. But one of the things that we kind of take for granted is that we don't consider our background. So you'll see my background. I don't know that I would use this background if I was going to be interviewing. And the reason is because if my head isn't quite in the center of the picture, it can be distracting, right? Another thing about teleconferencing is you don't want to wear, like for women, we don't want to wear like a big bold scarf, a lot of necklace, earrings, anything that would distract the interviewer. You want the interviewer to be paying attention to what you're saying instead of thinking about what's going to happen or what does that picture look like. Okay, I purposely sat here today so that I could use it as an example. If I were sitting at my own desk, behind me I've got pictures of horses. Again, I would not interview there because it would be distracting for the interviewer. You want to also make sure that you choose good lighting. Now, we don't think about that necessarily, but in my room that I'm sitting in right now, I believe that this is fairly good lighting. It is fluorescent lighting, but I believe that you can see me well. Okay. You don't want to have it where it is too dark. Then that implies that you're trying to hide something, even though you're not. You don't want to have it where it's too light or bright, where you have actually a light shining directly on you, because then you can't see your face. It washes out your face. Some of the teleconferencing people will put a different background behind them. I don't recommend that you do that either because there's a trail. You can't see it because I don't have a background right now, but I've done enough teleconferencing meetings where if the person moves a little bit, there's a trail of I don't know if it would be a trail of light or how you would, the trail of the background doesn't follow you. Okay, so again, it could be another distraction. Dress as you would face to face. If you want a good laugh, I recommend that you go on YouTube and just take a look at interviews that went wrong, okay, or failed teleconferencing interviews. um, it's kind of funny, so I'll give you an example. Speaking of background, there is one out there where the wife or the spouse or significant other is interviewing, and here comes, I don't know for sure if it was her husband or boyfriend or brother, whoever, but comes walking behind her in his underwear, and she's interviewing in the kitchen. Okay, things like that can happen. Another thing is that the dog could be barking because the Amazon man just came. Be aware of some of those distractions because what it will do is distract you. The interviewer could be used to some of those distractions, but you don't want to get distracted either. Dress as you would face to face. So, along with some of these other YouTube mistakes and mishaps, people will only dress down to their waist. And in these mistakes, the person had to get up for whatever reason. Okay. There is something that happens to us in our mind if we are fully dressed, and I can't explain to you what this is, but it puts you in more of a professional stance when you are fully dressed, okay? Professional stance and confidence. You want to make sure that you practice good eye contact and that you smile, okay? If I'm looking this way, that gives you a whole different concept or perception than if I'm looking directly into the camera. Another nice thing that I like about the teleconferencing interview is you can take post-its and, put them all the way around the screen. just as prompts to help you to remember to talk about different subjects and keep it job related and keep it specifically job description related. Okay. You also want to make sure that your audio is good. Please feel free to reach out to us at the Career Force. We can give you some feedback. We can tell you if your audio is good. You want to be able to make sure that you can hear those questions. I have actually been in meetings just recently where the internet service wasn't that great for the person who was running the meeting. And so we were actually only getting like every other word. Well, goodness, that could be some important information that is being left out during the interview. And how do you answer a question when you can't hear? Okay. Make sure that you always have a backup phone number handy. Now, let me tell you how to do this. So let's say that I was going to call you for an interview. First off, it's Murphy's Law. I can't explain to you why this happens, but just know that this may happen or could happen. The children are screaming in the background, the dog is barking, your spouse is upset about something because he or she just slammed their finger in the drawer. The phone rings and they're calling you in for an interview. If that happens, first off, make sure you have appropriate voicemail. Let it go into voicemail. Tell the family, okay, I think this is the people that are calling me for the interview. Go into a room that you can have some quiet space and bring a pen and a piece of paper with you. When you are in there, call them back as quickly as you can. You don't have to go into great detail about, I'm sorry I missed your call. Just say, oh, I'm so excited that you called me. Jot down what they're expecting you to bring to the interview, as well as how the interview is going to be, if it's going to be teleconference. Okay. Also, jot down a phone number. So many times, and I really had this just happen about 3 weeks ago. Gentleman came in and he was using our services, so our computer, our video, our audio, our internet to do a teleconferencing interview. And we made sure, him and I, everything was set up and ready to go. Okay. When the actual interview started, about maybe 2 minutes into the interview, we lost internet service. Now, this hasn't happened before, but of course, it happens during his interview. So he comes barreling out of the room. He's like, Glory, what do I do? I told him, I said, first off, know that this happens all the time. So take a deep breath. Second off, what we're going to do is we'll just have you call back because he had gotten the phone number and asked them if they could try it again. And I also explained to him that this is an excellent way to show how you handle stressful situations. His job was going to be stressful, and I told him you need to just turn this around to where you're going to show them that you can handle situations under stress, and not only that, you can overcome them quickly. Another thing that has changed is you. So
Before
Sheila,
you move on,
before,
yeah,
yes,
yeah, before you
yes,
move on, just a couple things with teleconferencing. And
yes.
I'm glad you brought up the point that at Career Force, we can help them prepare for a teleconference interview. And I've done this several times recently just to help the person get their setting right with the lighting. They had problems with their audio. We figured that out. So it is good just to do kind of a practice run with your
Yes.
teleconferencing. And then we did have a question. Someone was asking, what if you can't change the background on the type of teleconferencing program you're using, and then you're limited where you can set your computer up at?
Oh, those are great questions. So I guess the first thing I would want to know is why are you limited where you could set your computer up at? Because it would, like I say, I want you then if your background is going to be used against you, not that they're going to tell you that, but if it is distracting, then come down to the career force and use our system, okay? And then we can make sure that your background is fine. Let's say that one of the things that I've seen people do too is they have actually set up like a shower curtain. I don't mean a busy shower curtain, but what they did was they just had a shower curtain behind them so that it was a neutral background so they could cover up, the rest of the house. There are different ways that you can kind of play around with that. And then Sheila, what was the second part of that question about if you can't change your background on the
Y- y-
computer?
Right, and then you're limited where you can set your computer up at, like in your home.
Yeah, so like I say, if you're limited in your home, if it doesn't work in your home, reach out to us. Come down to the career force. Or what you can do in your home is, like I say, you can put a curtain or a shower curtain or something that is more not active but soothing behind you and not distracting, so that they can pay attention to you as opposed to what's going on in your background. Sometimes when we are doing interviews, it used to be you always went to the job to do the interview. So we're here to help you adjust. So if you want to get a hold of us, do that and we can give you some more feedback one on one. And then in regards to changing your background, I would have to actually kind of drill down a little more on that one because I have to purposely change my background from reality to I could change it to where it looks like I'm in Paris right now. So it should be reality first. Is Sheila, what do you have to say about that one?
Yeah, the simpler you can keep it, the better. Nothing busy behind you. Yeah,
Yes.
something
Yeah.
professional looking.
Yes. Yep. And again, you can reach out to us too, and we can help you with that. Did somebody just say something about their background being blurred?
No, no,
Okay.
not about
Okay.
blurred. No.
Okay.
We did have
Because you
another question come in though that they were asking if it's okay to wear headphones during an online interview.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Yep. And again, you want to be able to hear and for them to be able to hear you. Okay. All right. So let's talk about how you have changed. So one of the things that has changed is you've gained skills since the last time you have interviewed, but do you actually know what they are? The thing that's really fascinating is when I'm working with you one on one, I will ask you just off the top of your head, how many skills can you tell me or name? I'm putting you on the spot and you didn't know I was going to ask you that. Typically, people can answer 5 to 10, but I want to remind you that you have anywhere from 500 to 800 skills. Isn't that incredible? And in addition to that, that is not somebody who has a education, college education, work experience. So when you are at the interview, that's when you need to tell me about how your skills are. Also, I want to ask you about how are your feelings right now? I'm taught as an interviewer to pick out whether you have ill feelings towards your previous position. Do you talk positively about them, even though they might have been horrible bosses or a horrible place to work? It's very hard to talk positive about them when you've been mistreated. But in order for you to go in and have a successful interview with your new employer, you need to stop for a moment and address those feelings. And here's the reason why. When I'm working with employers, I ask every single one of them, what is the most important thing to you when you're hiring an employee? And every single one of them have said this answer in one form or another. Are they going to fit in here? Are they going to get along with the great employees I already have in place? So now I have a question for you that I'd like for you to put in the chat. How many of you have worked with a difficult colleague? Okay, so the answer is yes or no. How many of you have worked with somebody who's difficult to work with? Sheila, would you mind coming back on and just telling me if you see anybody that has put no in there?
Nobody wants to answer your question today.
Oh, okay.
Um, oh yeah, lots of yeses. Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So I ask this question every single time I do this workshop. And do you know that I have yet to this day gotten anybody who said no, that they haven't worked with a difficult colleague? So I want you to be aware of that. And then, second off, know that we all have worked with somebody who's difficult and know that that person can actually change the atmosphere of the whole place, right? Depending on how difficult they are. So when you are interviewing, you want to tell Mr. Employer that I am the best person for the job. Okay, I will do the job the way you want me to do it, and I get along really well with other people. People enjoy working with me. Every employer's reputation is very valuable to them. The reason that you cannot go into that interview and start talking about your previous employer and how horrible they were is because this employer who's interviewing you is thinking to themselves, what's going to happen if you don't work out here with me? Are you going to go tell everybody the same thing that you're speaking about your previous employer? I can guarantee you that if your previous employer wasn't a good employer, okay, everybody else is going to know that in the community too, especially small town communities. So you don't need to prove anything. But what you do need to prove is that you are the best person for the job. I want to tell you just a quick real life story. There was a lady who came in and interviewed. She proved to me she was the best person for the job. Wonderful lady. Told me during the job, I believe I can make you a lot of money and in turn I'll make some money too. She used those words. She said I get along really well with other people. And she said, I will do the job the way you want me to do it, Glory. So I hired her. Do you know that she was 74 years old? And do you know that she's still working at that job? Now, I've had people actually come up to me and say, would you hire her because you felt sorry for her? No, I hired her because she was the best person for the job. Obviously, she's still there and she's still getting along well with everybody. She's still doing a great job at her job. You know, another thing that we take for granted is that a lot of people don't necessarily show up on time. They're not men and women of their word. They say what they think you want to hear, but never follow through. That's what we bring to the table is as seasoned employees, we bring all of that to the table plus all of our skills. The wisdom that we have today, we paid a high price for. So let's use it to make a good living and also help the employer stay in business. I want you to ask yourself, what are your goals? I want you to get out a piece of paper, not right now, but write down what those goals are. I'm a strong believer that once you write it down, it seals into your brain. Write it down where you can read it every day. It's your vision. And I'm a strong believer that a man without a vision will perish. So figure out what your goals are, and then you can start to do whatever it takes to get those goals. Common mistakes that are made is that many people think that they need to put everything on their resume from their very first job back in 1982. Okay. When you are doing your resume, I only want you to go back 10 years. Now, this offends people, and I'm not intentionally trying to offend you. The truth is, the wisdom that you have, you paid a high price for. I totally agree with that. But if you are going to go back 30, 40 years, they may do age discrimination to you before they've ever met you. Your resume is an introduction to who you are, but it does not have to have everything listed on there that you've done in your lifetime. It must have the skills that qualify towards the job. Otherwise, if you are considered being overqualified, or if you're sending out these resumes and you have everything on there and you're not getting any interviews, it's not a quality resume. Okay. Another thing that happens a lot of times is just the losing the momentum. You know, we asked earlier about how's your job search been going? Many people said overwhelming, frustrating. enduring, discouraging. If you keep telling yourself that, it's very easy to stop doing it, meaning stop doing your job search. I want to encourage you that if you haven't gone on minnesotaworks.net recently, other than to connect with this workshop, which I'm delighted you did that, but take a look at what's out there. Make sure that your narrative in your mind isn't negative and then it's not coming out of your mouth negative during the interview. Also, make sure that you're updating your skills. Those skills you paid a high price for, and you have been learning skills. Even just learning how to teleconference is a skill. Maybe doing a refresher course that are free on Word or on how to do an Excel spreadsheet. Any of those types of skills that you have been updating, bring those up at the job interview when they ask you, again, if it applies to the job, when they ask you, so have you done any updating on your skills? Okay. Sheila, did you have a question?
Well, first of all, they were answering your question right away in the chat. I just forgot to scroll back down to see all the yeses on there. Um,
Okay.
and there were comments about blurring your background, as you had seen, when you're
Okay.
doing the interviewing, teleconferencing. And I've used that feature quite often. What do you think? Does it look okay?
I have used it once in a while, but what we've been told for this workshop is not to do any alterations. So I guess what I would recommend is if you want to have your background blurred, of course, this is a free country. You can go ahead and blur your background, but I still would reach out to one of us at the Career Force and get our opinion because you don't know for sure how it's presenting until you actually get some insight on it. And it's hard to see. Yes, I can see myself right now, but it's always great to get a second opinion. Okay.
Yeah, and then another question about lighting, Gloria, is someone said they had an interview and they had a light above them and behind them, and it still looked dark. Do you have any recommendations for lighting, or just practicing with one of us to see?
Yes, yes. So practice with one of us. But another thing that I found that's inexpensive is Amazon sells those ring lights. The ring light is actually designed for teleconferencing. Now, I'm not all about going out and spending money when you don't have a job, okay? But I did find that the ring light does work well and it throws off a soft light as opposed to a fluorescent, even throws off a little more skewed, and certainly a light bulb throws off more skewed. But again, we can kind of walk you through some of that. You just don't want to have a spotlight on you necessarily either. So I love the lighting in this room, but the lighting is also reflective off of the white wall. So it just kind of depends on the whole overall picture. And, reach out to us and let us help you with that. Sometimes too, we think that it might be too dark when it's actually just fine. So you're better off to let us, give some input as well. Or, you can actually ask your neighbor if they could give you some feedback. It doesn't necessarily have to be us, but we just have done it so much that you're probably going to get the best advice from us. Okay, let's talk about being seen as being overqualified. Okay, I worked with a gentleman who he ended up, and I want to say it was 25 years ago. However, many, many years ago, he was a truck driver, and he was very, very proud of that. But he was not a truck driver anymore, and he was going into retail. And so he said, Glory, would you take a look at my resume? And I looked at it. I said, this is awesome, but I do have a question. I said, so it looks to me like 25 years ago you were a truck driver. Why do you have that on there? And he said, well, I'm very proud of it. I want it on there. I want it left on there. He was coming to me because he wasn't getting interviews and he wanted me to review his resume. And I told him, I believe sincerely that's why you're not getting the interviews. Age discrimination is legal. Illegal. I said that wrong. Age discrimination is illegal, but it happens all the time. Please make sure that your resume isn't throwing out there how old you are. Okay. If you have a college degree, you don't need to put on there what year you graduated. Just put the degree. Once he took the fact off that he was a truck driver, now again, he's not going in back into truck driving. So if he was, then for sure we would keep that on there. But he was going into retail. Once he took the truck driving experience off, he ended up getting an interview. Now here's the truth. Once you're at the interview, they're obviously going to realize that you're not a 20-year-old, but now you're a real live person. Now you can go in and have a conversation with me and prove to me, convince me why you're the best person for the job. Convince me that you're going to make me a lot of money and that you'll make some money too. What happens when people are interviewing is they come in with the attitude, what you going to do for me? What's the pay? Can I get vacation time? When's the first payday? Do you think I could get $100 advance? Could I borrow $20 from you? I just blew in here on gas. Those were all true statements that I got during the interview period. Another way to seem overqualified is just by not listening. How are you talking? Are you behaving like you did when you were in charge? Are you saying stuff like, oh, that's not the way I used to do it? Are you downgrading the interviewer? If I ask you, where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? Do you say to me something like this? I see myself in your job, or I'm going to be retired. I'm out of here. Truth of the matter is that many people that I work with are going to be retiring in 3 to 5 years, but you don't say that at the interview. And even more, take it a step further. The truth is all we have is today. We don't know where we're going to be in 3 to 5 years, and that has nothing to do with age. That has to do with the fact that we're human beings and we're not guaranteed anything but right now, right here. So if you're asked, where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? I want you to say, I see myself working for you, and hopefully I will have gotten a promotion. Now, the lady that I hired who was in her 70s, I don't know for sure that she planned on working. She's now 85. Okay. I don't know that she planned on working that long, but she loves her job. And she convinced me she was going to be with me forever. You know, when employers hire you, that's how they're going to make the most money. They put a lot of time and effort into training you to do the job the way they want it done, and they want you to stay with them for a long time. But you say stuff to me like this: I'm out of here. Well, for my age, do you know that I talked to a gentleman about 2 weeks ago and I counted, and he said to me, what are you counting? I said, yes, I am. I'm counting how many times you are telling me you're too old for the job. Get this. He was the same age as me, and I love working. So if you're looking for a job, you need to convince the employer that you're there to work and that you love working. Be very careful about not losing momentum. When you start to talk negative, your narrative in your head starts to be negative. You start talking to other people about negative, you're negative when you're talking to other people. You're saying stuff to me like, well, Gloria, you don't understand. I'm older. Well, what I tell myself is that I'm getting younger and younger every day. And I tell myself that several times during the day. Now, is that true? Well, not according to the clock, but in my head it is. I don't plan on retiring anytime soon. And you know why? I spent some time at home during the pandemic and I didn't enjoy it. I love rubbing elbows with people. I love having conversations with my work colleagues. I love the job I do. So if you're going to ask me where do I see myself in 3 to 5 years, I'm going to be working. I'm going to be working here and hopefully I will have gotten a promotion. Sheila, looks like you got
Okay.
another question.
Yeah, a couple questions for you. So one is, should you add your PhD if the position only requires a BA degree?
Then the answer is no. Now, when you're at the interview, of course, you're going to talk about that you have a PhD, but I want you to look at it from an employer's stance. They could be looking at it like, why in the world would, since you have a PhD, would you apply for a BA only required job? In addition to that, they may assume that as soon as you get a PhD position, you're going to bail on that company and go with the other company. What I would do is I would leave it off of my resume, get the interview, and then tell them, by the way, I do have a PhD, but the reason that I'm applying for the BA is because I know you guys are a great company. I just want to get in the door. And then hopefully we could use the PhD to your advantage to make more money. Let me give you a quick example about the forklift driver. And this applies to your question. So I had one retail position open, and I had a gentleman who sent me a resume who was a forklift driver who was excellent at what he did. I mean, this guy could do everything under the sun with a forklift driver, with a forklift, okay? We didn't own a forklift, so I didn't interview him. Now, maybe he was sick of driving a forklift. He never wanted to sit on one again, but his resume did not portray that. So that's why you would leave it off. Do you have another question, Sheila?
Yeah, there's a second part to that question. What
Okay.
if your skills happened in a position over 10 years ago? How do you include those skills?
Excellent question. And that's what's happened to many of us. You want to have those skills on there. And what I would recommend that you do is what's called a combination resume. So there's the chronological, which is just that it starts from today and goes back 10 years. There's the functional, which works really well for somebody who hasn't been working for a while. It's like a college student. But there's a combination, which what we've done is we've taken both resumes and combined them together. So what makes this one so powerful is that we as human beings, when we look at this at a piece of paper, we tend to look at the center of the page first and then go up to the top. Top would be your name, okay, your contact information. In the combination resume, when I look at the center of the page, it's got all of your skills. So down at the bottom is your work history. So you would go your work history for the past 10 years, but you still have all the skills that you ended up getting at that other position. You're just not necessarily putting that company in. Again, remember that your resume is designed to get you the interview. Okay, it's not that you lie on your resume, but you're going to tailor it towards the job that you're applying for. And Sheila and I are experts at this, so we can help you more one-on-one with that as well.
Do you
I'm
want to
going to
take one
just,
more question or move
I
on?
think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through the next slides. We're just about done, and then we'll finish up with questions. That sound right, Sheila? So, not updating your skills. Um, Sometimes it's like, boy, I don't even know what type of skills I should update. We have dislocated worker program. That's not run by the state of Minnesota, but we can refer you to that. So dislocated worker program is a program where maybe you need a couple of college classes to get your certificate. That program will help. Coursera is another online platform. They used to have free classes. I want you to be careful with Coursera. Some of their classes are where you have to pay for them, but it's a great website that you can kind of plunk around a little bit and get a little better idea of some of the resources that are available to you. And then again, of course, reach back out to Sheila and I or somebody who is a job counselor at your local career force, because we're experts at this and we can help you. So Sheila, we're ready for questions.
Okay. So there a couple of people are asking about on applications, they ask you for your years of experience. How do you respond to that?
Okay, so let's say that you have 30 years of experience. I would put the words 10 plus. Now, a lot of times it won't let you do that. Okay. An application online, especially, you can only put numbers in there. So then I would just put 10. Now, again, once you get to the interview, that's when they're going to realize that you are older. But again, I can't just throw you away like I can a piece of paper, like your resume. I can't just say, no, I'm not going to interview this person because they're older. The deal is nobody's going to admit that they are discriminating you due to age, but it happens all the time. So you want to be able to get into that interview. So it's not that you're lying, it's that you are giving them the skills they're looking for along with the experience that lines up with it.
So, in another respect, then, how do you address gaps in your employment?
Excellent question. Here's the beauty of this. Since the pandemic there's a lot of people who have gaps in their employment. But one way that you can address it is by using years only. So we were taught years ago that when you, boy, on your resume, you have to put the day, month, and year you started, day, month, and year you quit. You can only use years now. And in addition to that, that's what most people are doing is only putting years. So if they started in 2010 or 2012 to the present, you can do that. Okay. Another thing too, I've had many people who they work for the same company, but they ended up getting promotions. So what they did was they broke out each job and it looked like they were job jumping when here in fact, they were with the same company. So we can help you with some of those questions if you want to get more specifics.
Another question about education. If the application is asking for a associate degree, should you apply for the job if you don't have the associate degree?
That's a really great question. I would say that if they have it as required and you don't have an AA degree, then I would say no, because some of our positions out there have requirements in order for you to get hired. Now, AA, I guess that one is a little bit questionable and a little more flexibility because AA is typically a 2-year degree. There are certain positions out there. For instance, if you were going to be a mental health practitioner, by law, you have to have a bachelor's degree in so many hours of supervision. So that one is a little bit difficult to answer because with AA, if you've got experience, if you've got 2, 3, 4 years experience, whatever, in the profession, that overrides an AA sometimes. So what you want to do is you want to look at the requirements and what's called preferred. Preferred is not required, meaning they would prefer you to have an AA degree, but they'll still consider your application or your resume if you don't. Then you want to really ramp up your experience to show them that I don't have the degree, but I have enough life experience that I can still do the job.
So here's another good question. How do you include position changes within the same company?
So what you would want to do is let's pretend the company's called ABC Supply. So you would have ABC Supply written on there and then your years. So let's, and again, I'm just making this up, say that it's 2015 to present. Underneath ABC Supply so say that you have ABC Supply written on the left-hand side, just as ABC Supply. Under there is where you would put your different job titles. Okay. So you could put general labor, but you put your highest first. Supervisor, assistant supervisor, general laborer. Okay, so your highest promotion first, and then you go backwards. I hope that makes sense. Sheila, did you understand what I just said?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. In my head, it's making sense, but I want to make sure the listener is understanding too.
Yeah. Um, and then just someone had made a comment in here that um, if they should tell an employer that they're retired and bored, and that they're looking to simply fill part of their day and feel productive and not looking for a new career. Is that something you should say to an
I wouldn't say
employer?
it like that, even though that is the truth. Here's what I would say. So I tried, first off, you want to make sure you get into the interview, right? You're at the interview now. And what I would say if I were you is, I tried retirement and it didn't work out the way I thought it was going to. I do so much better when I'm out in the community, when I'm working, when I'm rubbing elbows with people. And I am here to let you know that I would be so delighted if you would give me the opportunity to work for you. I know that you make a good product. I want to be part of your team. See how that's a whole different way, even though you're doing it because you would like something more to do, and that you are bored. I found the same thing. I feel the same way. I was bored sitting at home. I wanted to be able to be productive again. So you just twist it a little bit and say it, reframe it a little bit and say it more where it's going to benefit the employer.
Okay,
I think it is time, Sheila.
it is.
Just hit 11 o'clock.
And if we didn't answer your question, we will follow up with an email to you.
Yes, and Sheila and I, we take pride in going through the chat after the workshop's over, so we will answer your questions. When she's sending the follow-up email to, it'll have all the Career Force locations and contact information, so you're going to be able to find us very easily. I believe that if you want to get a job, you can get a job. Let us help you, okay? One of the things we don't want you to do is to sit at home and suffer. We're here to help you, and we are experts at it. So, blessings to you. And if you want to work, you can. Thank you, and you have a wonderful day.